first things first, find that one thing that you're incredibly passionate about. For me, it was the plastic pollution, solving that crisis, but for you, it could be anything else. Literally find one thing that gets you super excited, very passionate about it, and find your unique way of being able to introduce that into the world. What makes you stand out? What are your skills? What is your gift? What is your strength? And apply that immediately. That's the next step. Do not make a business plan. Don't stress out so much. Go for it and start today.
Hi guys, Elias here from the Moonshot Pirates, and welcome to our interview with Melati Wijsen, an incredible changemaker. So I will give you a short introduction about the Moonshot Pirates. So the Moonshot Pirates are an international movement of future-oriented entrepreneurs and young changemakers. So it's all about realizing your ideas and develop them for the future and have a supportive community at your disposal. So if you have amazing ideas and don't know how to realize them, just sign up on the Moonshot Pirates website and get started.
Hey everyone, I'm Anna, and I'm so excited to be interviewing Melati today. Let me give you a quick introduction. Melati Wijsen is 20. She's an Indonesian Dutch activist and change maker, and she's co-founder of the Bye Bye Plastic Bags movement and responsible, she had a big part to play in banning plastics from Bali, Indonesia. And she's also started movements such as One Island, One Voice, the social enterprise Mountain Mama, and most recently, Youthtopia. And she's been featured everywhere on Forbes, Times, and she's co-chaired a session in the World Economic Forum. She's done TED Talks, been on Al Jazeera, on the BBC. The other day, I was watching her and her sister on Deadly 60 on CBBC. So she's done a lot of cool things. So, Melati, we can find out about you on the internet, but what's something that most people familiar with your work wouldn't know?
Oh, that's a great question to start off with. I think something that people don't know about me, I ride an electric scooter. I am vegetarian for the last 6 years. And yeah, I think that's two cool facts that you can know about me that you don't know on the internet.
I mean, they're pretty cool facts. And you're in Bali right now, right?
I am. I'm in Bali, finally. I grew up here, but through 2 years or 3 years, I haven't really been home. So I'm happy that I'm calling you from Bali.
And we're happy that you're calling us from Bali too. So what time is it there? And to be honest, what's a day in your life like?
So it is 6:07 p.m. right now, and I have I'm at the end of a really busy day. We have a beautiful headquarter office here on the island of Bali, made up of 5 shipping containers, powered by solar panels. We have a garden out front. So it is an absolute dream to be coming here every day. Every morning, I almost have to pinch myself and be like, I can't believe this is the office that I get to work in. But it's filled my day with actually, right now, a lot of boring administrative, like online stuff. Which I'm sure a lot of us can relate to. I miss the action on the ground and I miss traveling. But when I'm not doing those two things, it's oftentimes doing recording sessions like this with cool people like you.
Thanks. So what gets you up in the morning?
What gets me up in the morning? I think, honestly, I have a hard time waking up in the morning. I am not a morning person. Everybody who knows me will tell you that. But I think what gets me up in the morning is just the excitement to do something big, to do something different. I think what I will always say to people that want to know what my day is like or what gets me up out of bed in the morning is there's never a dull moment in the life of a young change maker.
Yeah. So why don't you take us through that journey of your life as a young change maker? How did it all start? Where was the beginning? Tell us the beginning story.
Yeah, I mean, so when I was 12 years old, I started asking the bigger questions of why plastic pollution was ending up in our environment. Growing up on the island of Bali, we were so connected to the natural world. It was, everywhere around us. We would see the beautiful rice fields, the mountains, and the ocean connected. But what we also saw, and a strong reality there, was plastic pollution. It was just so in your face, you couldn't, escape it. And so that's why the big questions of, why was plastic ending up there? And the second most important question, what can we do about it? So, the rest is pretty much history. Together with my younger sister, Isabel, we started our first initiative called Bye Bye Plastic Bags, and we thought we could achieve the goal of banning plastic bags on Bali within a summer. And here we are, 7 years later, still on the front lines.
And that's really, really incredible. But we buy things on a daily basis, and those things could end up in nature. They could end up in the stomach of a bird. How do we ensure that it doesn't? What can we Moonshot Pirates do?
Well, I think, look, there's a lot that we can do as individuals by, understanding what we're consuming and where it's ending up. Actually, it's a pretty interesting question to ask yourself. Do you know where your trash goes after you put it into your bin? Where does that go? And it's different for everyone in every city, in every country, because of the waste management system set in place. But what you can do is, first and foremost, make sure that it reaches that first step of actually going into the bin. The next part of this question is actually more of a systemic outlook of actually, having systems available and provided so that even when you put, as an individual, your trash in the bin, it's not ending up in an illegal landfill or rice field or ocean, right? So there's a lot we can do of, making sure that we have that responsibility as consumers to put it in the bin. And then there's a systemic need of having the actual system in place of waste collection, waste separation, and actual management of that waste. So I didn't really answer your question, but I think the next step then is obviously to find out what currently exists in your local area.
Yeah. No, I totally understand, and I totally agree. So it starts with us putting it in the bin, but then what happens in the bin? Perhaps we need to ask policymakers about systemic changes. What systemic changes do you think should be introduced in an ideal world?
Well, I can start off easy with, an example here in Indonesia. What we need to see more of being implemented is actually that overall waste management system, right? Because banning single-use plastic bags is step one, but there's so many other single-use plastics out there. Think about it: the straws, sachets, bottles. And if we do not have, again, that system to be able to manage the waste properly, and it starts with something as simple as rubbish collection or waste collection, right? Here in Indonesia and Bali, we do not have that. I don't know if where you come from, right? When before you wake up, there are city garbage trucks coming, collecting the waste, and then you wake up, you go down the same street, and the bins are empty. Here, there's piles and piles and piles that just keep growing into illegal landfills or just open burning on the side of the road. So I think what kind of systemic changes we need to start seeing is actually the implementation of a better waste management system, collection, separation, and all of that.
Absolutely. Sounds really heartbreaking to see that in the mornings. How do you deal with it? Because it can be quite upsetting, or do people just get used to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's horrible to say that you can get used to something as horrible as plastic pollution, but it's become such a reality, and I'll share a story here because actually it goes really nicely with your question. The other day I was sitting at my local beach just 100 meters in front of my house, and I was watching the crowd, kind of walking, and there were different types of people doing different types of activities on this beach. And I saw by a river, the mouth of a river, a small family, and their dad was like, okay, kids, it's time to go home. And you see these siblings, run after their dad who is carrying all of their bags. And there's this trail of plastic, right, on the beach, of pollution just everywhere. And the girls, these two little girls who reminded me of my sister, were just dancing, in between all this plastic and like skipping. And, it seemed like it was just this oblivion, or, they were just so oblivious to the situation around them of that this plastic should not be there. So it's quite frightening to see how immune the generation that's raised around all of this plastic pollution. But at the same time, there is a very strong willingness from the people of Bali on a whole to say, okay, what can we do to protect our island? Enough. Nobody likes to see this plastic.
It's good. We have hope. But of course, it's not just the plastics you can see that we ought to be concerned about, but also microplastics, because they're absolutely everywhere. They're in parts of the ocean where lights don't reach. And I read recently that they even found traces of microplastic in fetuses.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I know. Isn't that insane? It's microplastics are everywhere, and that's also the tricky part of the problem, is that trying to have someone understand how plastic breaks down and that we can't see it, but it's still there. It's a lot to do with having actually people understand that, because it's not only the facts that it's in the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean, but it's also already entering our own health systems. So, for example, every single week we are already ingesting a credit card's worth of plastic. So 5 grams of plastic every single week. There's studies that already show we're already doing this. So it's it's quite overwhelming to feel like, it's not just the environment that it's impacting, but it's actually also impacting our own health. And if that's not, a trigger enough for us to take action, I'm not sure what is.
Oh my goodness, that was some horrific imagery there. I just imagine people like eating credit cards. That is really shocking. That is crazy. Elias, do we have questions from panelists? Attendees?
We have a live question from Nevena. So yeah, it's about like banning plastic bags and what are the biggest obstacles. So if you bring her live, she can ask the question. Nevena.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, Nevena.
Hi. Thank you a lot for your amazing, like what you said until now. I'm just amazed, really. So my question is, when you were fighting against the use of plastic bags, what were the biggest obstacles and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think, thank you so much, Nevena, for your question. There were a lot of obstacles along the years. You can imagine we're now almost in our 8th year of campaigning. Banning the bags came in our 6th year. So I think a lot of the obstacles were, especially at the beginning when we started to, do policy change, talk with government about regulations. We were a bunch of like 14-year-olds that just simply couldn't understand the language of, why it was so complicated, what were the barriers in the actual like legislation side. So how we overcame that is actually opening this sort of need for help in the space of law and regulation to our community. And that's actually when quite a few handful pro bono environmental lawyers came in and helped us and sat through us, every day after school, walking us through all of this, barriers and whatnot. But I think, to answer your question, I think the way we solved that challenge of not being able to particularly understand what the challenges were on a political level, we opened ourselves to mentors and advisors that could actually lead us in the right direction.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Very much, Nevena, for your question. And we have from an anonymous viewer, we have a question that you have seen many countries in our world, and how do they do in the field of banning plastic bags in comparison to Bali? Is your approach applicable to other countries as well? What is the difference?
Yeah, so actually, thank you for that question. Look, I think every situation with any solution, whether it's banning plastic bags or something else, it cannot be a copy-paste solution. We have to do our local homework of how the community's mindset level is, about where the regulation level is, about, in general, how to move forward in that local specific space. Where I'm inspired from different countries banning single-use plastic bags, I often look at the example of Rwanda. Years ago, they already implemented the ban on single-use plastic bags, and they're one of the poorest countries in the world. And if they can do it, why can't we do it? And that was also when my sister and I were first starting, we really looked up to Rwanda, because even when you arrive at the airport, they open your bags and will take a plastic bag away from you before entering the country. I mean, see, so things like that are possible. And that's one solution that I think can be applicable at every airport. I think at the end of our TED Talk in 2015, we said, our vision and our wish was for everybody landing on the island of Bali to be greeted with, "Welcome to Bali. do you have any plastic bags to declare, right? And so there are lots of like smaller scale things that are, you know, applicable to other locations, but when it comes down to actually implementing policy, also creating policy, and who are the major players in getting the policy there is going to be different in every location.
Perfect, thanks. Now we have another live question from Lucas. So please, Lucas, just ask away.
Hello, I'm Lucas Killian, and I wondered if your community was really supportive as you started your different projects and the country as a whole now that you've grown to have bigger projects.
Thank you so much, Lucas. It's nice to meet you. Yeah, the response from the community when we started, well, you can imagine, think if you saw two little girls who are 10 and 12 years old standing up on a very big stage with a little microphone with a very strong vision. We were met with a lot of, oh, they're so cute. But it did, you know, stay there. And what we had, the challenge then was for our cute group of little, you know, kids at the time to get taken seriously. And that's where persistence and commitment and never giving up, you know, was really played a huge role. And at the point where whenever we came to a community gathering or whenever we showed up at an event, a government meeting, they would turn their heads and say, oh, they're still here. And they're not going away until they see what they want change. So we were met with a lot of positive support, but there were also times where our community members necessarily didn't understand why it was important, right? And that shows again the education gap that we're living in right now, where people simply don't understand why it's important to ban single-use plastic bags or why it is affecting our own health. And so that's really where, again, the focus and the work that we do with bioplastic bags is in the education space and changing people's mindset.
Thank you very much, Melati and Lucas. And Anna?
Brilliant. That was a great question. Actually, that leads me on to another question. You said that, yes, it was great that you were cute and that, you know, gave a bit of the shock factor and made people listen to you initially. But then how did you, being so young and new to this world, how did you manage to be professionally perceived by others?
Well, I think I'm going to answer this question in two sorts of parts and ways. I think, you know, the awesome part about being, you know, these young kids at the conference was that we never had to act professional. We always came into that space from, you know, full of passion, full of authenticity. And in that way, it connected with the hearts of the professionals and the CEOs and the politicians that were our audience. Because at the end of the day, that's all that it was, a heart connection and something where they then said, huh, okay, they really have something to say. But I think as well, what helped was that we were very prepared in what we wanted to say, what our message was. And I always say this, if you are a young change maker and you want to create change, what specifically is that change you want to achieve? We could have said, bye-bye plastic, everything. It would have been a lot harder to get the attention to urge and convince. It would have been a lot more work and effort to do that. But because we started with one specific goal, bye-bye plastic bags, you know, we had the foot in the door. And once we had that, we could open the discussion to a larger thing. And that's why I also opened about waste management, right? That is the long-term solution. But we had to start with something. We wanted to show that we were serious about this one tangible change. And if we could do that, imagine all the other things we could do. So I think with that approach and that mindset is what allowed us to enter these rooms and keep being invited back into these rooms.
Right. It's a bit like one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. That's very, very interesting and great advice as well, with having a plan of action rather than just, and a clear goal rather than just doing whatever. I was wondering, of course, it's a great thing to ban plastics. Single-use plastics have done a lot of harm to the whole ecosystem. But there's some experts say that we shouldn't focus on plastic at the cost of climate change, because there's research to suggest that plastic may be preferable to other materials when it comes to decreasing the effects of climate change because of the carbon emissions from producing plastic bags versus paper bags, for example. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think there's a really dangerous narrative that can be created in the sense of boxing, these different boxing them in different categories of plastic pollution is just plastic pollution, climate change is just climate change, refugee crisis is just the refugee crisis, agriculture is just agriculture. We have to start communicating in a way where everything is interconnected. Plastic bags, in order to create plastic items, you have to access fossil fuels. In order to access fossil fuels, you have to go and take them out of the ground, right? So everything is interconnected. And that's why I think when we look at alternatives, we also have to think in a different way, where we know systems that currently exist will not work for us in the future. And that's where we have to be extra innovative, where we have to think in circular systems that not only benefit one part of the story, but takes into account all others. So you get what I mean? It has to be, again, bringing in that more systems thinking. And whereas plastic bags, and even sometimes paper bags, if not made properly, or biomaterial, right? The problem with these is that it's still single use. And that's the actual problem, because we live in a single use culture where we just throw away without understanding the consequences, where we throw in the bin and don't care necessarily where it ends up. So this throwaway culture. So we have to stop that with any product, whether that's plastic, paper, or anything else. The masks, even during the pandemic, right? We have to find ways where we can be more circular and sustainable towards the environment.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, the circular systems thinking approach. I think that is fortunately becoming a lot more popular these days, especially as our generation is growing up. Speaking of our generation and young people, I know you graduated a year early. Congratulations on that. That's pretty impressive in itself. How did you manage your school life with all the initiatives that you were leading?
Okay, so first and foremost, I graduated a year early, not because I got extra credit or was really good and smart at math. I went to a really great school called the Green School, and they challenged me to create my own timetable, and I was determined to make sure that I could allocate as much time out in the field making change. And in that way, I kind of scheduled a lot of the conferences and sessions that I was in with, world leading scientists. And I created modules actually from that, where I would create reports that would then credit into, an actual science lesson for myself. So that's one way that the school really supported me. And then the second way of, I guess, time management, to your question, right, of how did I balance school and work, is I think you have to be, one, very clear in priorities and what matters to you, because then it feels right as well of what you're doing. And secondly, surround yourself with a community that can also help you balance that out. Because if you're someone like me, very passionate and determined to get things done, sometimes you forget about so things like school. And that's where, like, my sister, my mom, my friends really kept me in check and said, hey, Mel, like, maybe take some time here just focusing on school. So it's really about figuring out that balance and those priorities for what's important to you.
That's great. What are your plans for further education? Are you planning on going to university soon?
Right now, not going to university. I have been taking a couple online courses here and there, but generally, I think also with my new upcoming project, there's so much to learn out there, and it doesn't always mean you have to learn in a four-walled classroom.
That's true. And I think we see it now more than ever. People are doing so much just through internet and their own resources. There's no need, I guess, to always go to higher education, because the world's your oyster.
Exactly. I mean, maybe one day. I do believe that there is so much that you can learn with the professors and the amount of knowledge that is in universities. Just at this moment, the format that I am taking on is a lot more peer-to-peer and also access that I have to just incredible platforms of, leading scientists, entrepreneurs, innovators, and just taking full advantage of the learning that comes from there.
Yeah, you have early access, I guess.
Yeah, I know, and
to all these
that's like
people.
that's the most annoying thing, though. And I do voice this out oftentimes when I'm like at a conference and I'm like, all right, guys, how many of you here are below the age of 30? Nobody raises their hands. And I'm like, how many of you are below the age of 25? A couple of hands up. And I'm like, this is the problem. We cannot start, inviting, people after they graduate university to come to these like exclusive, incredible wealth of knowledge events. I mean, it has to start from middle school, high school, invite more young people in. So I think that's definitely part of my agenda, to make sure that high-level conferences and events are including more and more young people.
Yeah, that's great. Let's include more young people. In fact, Elias and I were looking at your Bye Bye Plastic Bags team leaders and how to set it up, and we found something interesting. You have an age restriction on the upper end. So I think it's 28-year-old max that you can be a team leader for Bye Bye Plastics. What's the thought behind that?
Honestly, a lot of those things we just made as we went. Sorry. And yeah, we've had a lot of questions about the age restrictions. It's mainly because Bye Bye Plastic Bags, we want it to be led by young people that are still connected to an educational institution, so that they can have that larger support of teachers, of the school, of that learning community. And so that's where, we thought high school, late middle school to end of university sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, open to interpretations.
That's very cool. Elias, do we have any more questions from the attendees?
Yeah, from Lucas, he's asking if you're also like together with different organizations and projects such as maybe ocean cleanup, in order to achieve more impact, or do you have any cooperations also for Utopia? So yeah.
Yes. So Utopia is a little bit different because we don't focus on only partnerships in the space of plastic pollution. But for Bye Bye Plastic Bags, we have a lot of incredible partnerships with, we've collaborated before with 4Oceans. WWF is on our pipeline of partnerships. We've worked with local organizations here on the island, as well as a big other partnership that is forming for us is with the World Economic Forum and their Global Plastic Action Partnership, GPAP. And so, yeah, I mean, we collaborate a lot because at the end of the day, collaboration is the only way that we're going to see change happen. So the more partnerships, the more true collaborations, the better.
Yeah, totally agree. Thanks for the question, Lucas. And I also have a question for you, for if you're doing like this global mentor in your country or a city for Bye Bye Plastic Bags. What are the next steps? Because I assigned for Vienna, and I think it must be now reviewed from your team or something. So what are the next steps if you assign for yeah, being like a global peer leader for Bye Bye Plastic Bags?
Yes, okay, and I'll take you through that, but I just wanted to explain why I was like so shocked just now, because
okay,
there was lightning and then a really loud crash of thunder.
Wow.
Yeah. And I haven't been in the containers during a thunderstorm, so I'm like, everything is like shaking. But anyways,
is it like usual in Bali?
You can hear me.
Is it usual in Bali to have a lot of like storms and thunders, or?
Yeah, so right now we're at the end of rainy season.
Okay.
It should be stopping this week. We've had more sunny days, but every now and then you get the last bit of the monsoon of the tropical season. Wow. So yeah, but I'm if you have trouble hearing me, let me know, or if the connection goes off, it's because
no, until now it's perfect.
Okay, but to your question of what are the next steps of the Bye Bye Plastic Bag team leader. So once you sign up and register, you would be given a starter kit. And that starter kit is roughly about 2 weeks, give or take how much time you actually put into it. But it's about a 2-week process for you to complete everything from doing the presentation, gathering the data of your local community, understanding how shop owners feel about plastic. So we really wanted to kind of create that starter kit as a filter for someone, you know, that is really committed. You wouldn't do it if you're really not committed, all of these checklists, right? So once you submit that, we'd set up an interview with you. have kind of a Zoom like we're having now and get to know you a little bit more, get to know what your intentions are, get to know if you're just doing this for your college CV, but just to make sure that the intentions are aligned. And then once that is approved, you'd start your bioplastic bags team if there is not already a local team here or in your area started. And then you would get your own logo. You would join our monthly meetings with bioplastic bag team leaders around the world, and we would help you craft campaigns, push out letters to your authorities, and all sorts of things to make sure that the goal of education and policy change are met in your local areas.
Oh, great. Thanks for the question. I will follow to complete this application and hopefully start it in Vienna. Thanks.
Yes, that would be amazing.
Yeah, join Bye Bye Plastics, everyone. Yeah, so obviously, can you tell us a little bit about the challenges you faced in setting up and continuing Bye Bye Plastics? Because surely it wasn't all smooth sailing.
No, definitely not. And I think the key word here is of how you kept going, right? Because setting up one thing, right? Setting up something is one thing and continuing is another thing. So when we started, because it came from this place of pure excitement, passion, just like we were so fired up from having this goal. Actually, today I spent some time looking back at videos of when we started. And we're like, very small, tiny, but so energetic. I was like, oh, so cute. I had that reaction to myself as well. I was like, oh my gosh. But anyways, because of that passion, because of that eagerness, we started without the plan, without the ideas. And it was this just blank canvas that we had to have fun and to make sure that our voices and our message were heard. The continuing process was where the challenge kicked in, especially after a year of no luck meeting anyone of authority, after a year of, a lot of cute inspiration. There was no serious outcome. And we thought, this is going to take us a lot longer than a summer project. And I think the ways that we kind of overcame that was, again, surround yourself with a team, making sure that it's not just you or just me and my sister. We really worked hard on building that team around us. Till today, we're one of the largest youth-led NGOs in the country. And because of them and because of their help, we're still able to be here 8 years later.
That's incredible. Yeah, obviously it's amazing to have such a great community around you, and you've also given back to the community as well. I know your Bye Bye Plastic Bags you have obviously accomplished a lot with that, but also Mountain Mamas. It trains local women in Bali to hand make reusable bags from donated and recycled plastic. So I was just wondering, are the two sort of NGOs models linked? Did one lead to the other?
Yes, so Mountain Mamas, and I actually do have a bag in here. 1 second, I'll get it, 1 second.
Okay, excited to see it.
So Mountain Mama bags, what are they? They're these bags, and how they work, or how Mountain Mamas work, is indeed, as you said, they are interlinked with bioplastic bags. So you can imagine one of the most frequently asked questions was, if you want us to say bye-bye to plastic bags, what do you want us to use? Right? And there are a lot of alternatives there. We didn't necessarily want to get involved in the space of creating alternatives because there were amazing NGOs on the ground doing that, but at the same time, being young Indonesian girls on the front line, we felt a huge opportunity to be able to empower other local women in the same leadership positions or opportunities, at least. So that's where the idea of Mountain Mamas came into place. It's a social enterprise where we empower the local women in the communities to make alternative bags from pre-loved material. Pre-loved. This here, for example, is a cutting from an old sarong that we used to have, or blanket that we used to have. Inside of the bags, we've actually partnered, so talking about collaborations, another way of how we made things possible. Here is an old hotel sheet. Can you see? You can kind of see the lines. We dyed it indigo, natural indigo dye, to make it line our bags. These sheets would have otherwise gone to landfill because they had a rip or a stain in them. And we said, give them to us and we can make bags from them. And so that's where kind of the question of what do you want us to use? Here's our solution of what we provide while empowering a community of women up in the mountains here in Bali.
Wow. The bags look absolutely gorgeous. And I think it's really amazing how you've not only highlighted a problem, but also provided a solution that not only tackles that awful throwaway culture we have, but also helps the people in your community directly. So how are these bags sold only locally, or can people buy it internationally?
So we do have an online shop, but because of the pandemic, it's been really difficult to enter borders through the online shopping process. So I mean, feel free to check it out, and the administrative team will be able to, make sure your order gets there or doesn't, unfortunately. But yeah, I wish I could send some to you guys.
Oh, it's okay. Maybe we should meet up at some point. Either you come here or we go to Bali or something like that. It would be really lovely to meet you. In fact, if we had to have a second interview in any place in the whole wide world, where would you want it to be?
I would like to show you the containers. So I would ask you to come to Bali, and we'd come up to the containers and probably sit on the top of one, outlooking the rice fields, so I can show you the beauty of the natural world here in Bali.
Wow, I would really love to see that. So you're not only completely into this whole world of environmental change, but also Youthtopia. That is slightly different. What can you tell us about Youthtopia?
Yeah, I mean, again, so everything kind of stems from the experience with bioplastic bags. I've been on an incredible journey for the last 7 years, speaking to over 200,000 young kids all around the world in every corner, from different types of classrooms, different type of backgrounds and cultures. But whenever we shared the story of bioplastic bags, we would always get asked the same question: how can I do what you do? And that's where Youthtopia comes in. We're a community-centric platform with learning at its core, and we work together with frontline young changemakers who have their own project, their own track record of change, and from concept to delivery, we create programs for the rising young changemaker. So we bring in that relatable factor and that special ingredient, which you believe in as well, of having a young person come in there and share to their peers of exactly how to become a change maker. And that's what Youthtopia revolves around.
Yes, and I think Moonshot Pirates also is very keen on this. And I do believe that a lot of young people really have this strong desire to improve the world and make a difference, but a lot of us just don't know how. Exactly. So thank you for setting up all these things for Youthtopia as well. So what are the key differences Youthtopia will have over, say, an existing program? Or what's your USP?
Yeah, no, I think our ability at Youthtopia is to actually bring together all of these young change makers at the front lines, big names and small names. Every single young person that we interact with, we invite onto our Circle of Youth network. And this is the source of all of our programs at Youthtopia. It's really led by youth for youth. And the incredible part is that we act as a sort of umbrella. We do not want it to become another, time list or Forbes 30 under 30 kind of listing of young change makers. It's a network by young change makers where we connect with each other. So I think that that's really the signature and what makes Youthtopia so unique. And every time I've spoken to young people and have them on board the Circle of Youth, we've never been met with a no. Instead, we've always been met with a this is what we've been waiting for. And it's so refreshing as a young change maker for the last 7 years. When I first started, there were very little voices of young change makers out there. What we've seen now is this rise and this amplification of voices from our generation who are standing up and who are creating incredible change. And what the intention of Youthtopia is to become the headquarters of young change makers, where we can learn from each other, share our experiences with each other.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, Sorry, I lost you guys for a second, and at the same time, the lightning happened, and I was like, no.
Oh no. Yeah,
But I
scary.
think you are still here. Okay, but yeah, that's really the goal of Youthopia, and how we're making it work with all of these incredible young change makers around the world.
So, what are the requirements to join Youthopia? Are there age requirements, or what level of change, for example, do you need to make before joining the community?
So for the Circle of Youth, you have to have your own project and a track record of change. So something that you were able to achieve in your community that brought a positive impact, or you were trying to achieve with a project. So bioplastic bags, 6 years, and we were still on the front lines. But to join our community on a whole, you just have to be eager to create change, and start asking the questions of basically wanting to know any foundational change-making skill. That's what we provide at Youthopia. Age requirements, not really. Our programs are designed for an age group of 12 to 25, give or take a little bit less and a little bit more, but that's the audience that we are currently having.
That's great. So from what you've mentioned, all these things, bioplastic bags, mountain mamas, Youthopia, they're all interrelated. And I think doing the first thing helped the second thing, which helped the third thing. So what do you think? What are your key takeaways from your experience in doing all of these great projects?
Key takeaways. Oh, I think the number one key takeaway that I've not already kind of shared throughout the talk, or want to put more emphasis on, is I think collaboration. The power of that has been huge in enabling us to get from A to where we are today. So I think that is probably the strongest key takeaway from all three of the projects, or all of the projects.
Interesting. And what was your biggest roadblock? What's an example of a mistake or failure that you experienced that you then overcame and learned from?
I think personally, the biggest mistake that I have done and sometimes still do is take things personally. And that is the biggest mistake you can ever do, because that's when you let ego get in the way. And that's where we have to learn just to see the bigger picture, step aside, and let go, let flow.
Let go, let flow. Remember that, people. Elias, I think I've been speaking for a bit long now.
We have a couple of questions. So from Kat from TEDx, she asks if you had a conversation with any fossil fuel executives about their impact on the planet, like some kind of a meeting with the enemy. Did you have something like that?
Oh yeah, a lot of people, and I've been having these talks with corporates for a long time, even when activists didn't really, it was frowned upon. You don't sit on the same table as the enemy. But at the same time, I've always been very strong that we need to have everybody on the table, and we need to have that conversation at the start so that we can be able to go towards the journey and make sure that everybody's on the same page. So yes, I have had a lot of conversations with mostly in like the plastic production side. So the companies of really major CEOs and production lines. And it's not always the easiest conversations. You really have to, kind of be prepared for it, because these CSOs, Chief Sustainable Officers, are very much trained into how to divert the conversation in a way that they get to promote all of the great things that they're doing to your audience, for example, right? So that's a skill that is something that I really am passionate about learning how to master. But more so than that, it's actually just having that conversation with a clear outcome. What do you want them to achieve? And one of the proudest achievements that we have been able to see here in Indonesia is with one of the largest corporations that produces plastic cups. We've actually, through the relationships and through the multiple meetings and conversations, they have now announced that they will stop producing the cup from plastic materials and shift to a more sustainable material. And we're actually working with them to create competitions where Youthopia then facilitates, finding those young entrepreneurs and innovators that do have the solutions, because they exist. We know the alternatives are there. We know the innovation is there, but sometimes these corporates have a gap for whatever reason. to these solutions. And that's where we can act as a bridge and invite those solutions to be accelerated into implementation. So yes, good does come out of having dinner with the enemy.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds quite hard, but you managed a lot of things. So then there's like another question from Nevena, and she asks, okay, you need to do a lot of prep work and have a strong community and all of that, but where do you get all this energy from? Like, how do you like stand up every day and have this energy and just burst through the day and do amazing stuff? So how do you manage that?
I ask myself that question every day. So if you have the answer, please let me know. But no, I think it's just really, again, being very confident and being very strong in what you stand for. What's the message you deliver? And again, I think it's about practicing the fact that it's bigger than you. So, you know, it's important to understand that so that you can also take a deep breath and balance your schedule, balance your feelings, and also know that it's okay to kind of take a step back every now and then, because that's what allows you to come back the next day with more energy.
Okay, great.
That's a great way. Just take a step back, calm down. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of meditation recently, and that's helped me. So for you, are there any particular tips or techniques or methods you use to get yourself focused in the zone and also step back?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm still learning this, honestly, so I'm not the best person to ask. In fact, my mom just now, she was like, Mel, you should take a holiday, like just take a couple of days, but we're in a really busy time of a project at the moment. So I'm like, okay, until the finish line. So I think it's about like kind of setting yourself goals if you are kind of a workaholic, change maker personality. But it's that goal setting, the intention, and then things like just being in nature. I mean, I live in beautiful Bali, so it's really not that difficult to connect with nature. Sometimes just going for walks really helps. And I journal. I write a lot. So that is one of the ways that I kind of like release and let go. And then if I want to get in the zone, I kind of just write a to-do list. I don't know if any of you guys do that, but like to get focused, I have to know what I'm doing. So yeah, that's kind of a tip from me of how I get in the zone.
That's great. So what advice do you have for someone, a future change maker, who wants to pursue a career path similar to your own?
I love that you use the word career, because I'm still trying to convince some people that it is a career or like a job. But anyways, first things first, find that one thing that you're incredibly passionate about. You know, for me, it was the plastic pollution, solving that crisis, but for you, it could be anything else. Literally find one thing that gets you super excited, very passionate about it, and find your unique way of being able to introduce that into the world. What makes you stand out? What are your skills? What is your gift? What is your strength? And apply that immediately. That's the next step. Do not make a business plan. Don't stress out so much. Go for it and start today.
Right. And to be honest, I think that's been a recurring theme in this interview. The fact that you should just take the first step, have a plan, have a goal, and with that goal in mind, you will automatically find your way there as long as you're focused on the goal. So I think that's some really, really great advice. So thank you.
Yeah, and I did want to add one thing, Anna, because oftentimes when we ask this question, we think about those that have a leadership hat on, or the skills to really march up to the front, grab up that microphone. But to create change, you don't always have to be that type of leader. You can be someone in the background. You can be someone that volunteers your skills. Leadership comes in many different forms. So find out what you want to do, and it doesn't always have to mean going up on stage or holding the megaphone. Find out what you're really good at and what you enjoy doing, and in that way you'll create change that is far more greater.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this advice when it comes to choosing subjects for universities, but it's great to know that it applies to real life as well.
Yes,
So on a slightly unrelated note, did you get to, how typical was your school experience? Did you get to have prom, and how did it differ to perhaps a typical student experience in a typical school?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely not a typical school at all. I think growing up on Bali it's a whole other thing. Island life is pretty fun. You know, we have a lot of different opportunities. We can change scenery, be in a forest, be on the beach, be up in a mountain, putting 7 sweaters on. So, you know, there's a lot of fun and adventure. But when it came to school as well, because I went to the green school, it was such a different experience. No walls. We had palm trees growing in the middle of our classroom, pigs that we had to feed with our school leftover lunches. So I think that is a really big reason of why I am the way I am. But in respect to the normaler side of what you were saying of like having prom or you know, valedictorian speeches, my sister would probably be the best example to give you. Well, actually not, because she was class of 2020, so she had to do everything virtually. But she had prom, she was valedictorian, she was prom queen. She had, you know, high school dances that she facilitated and organized. So yeah, I mean, of course, there were spaces to do those sorts of things.
That's incredible. I mean, it's interesting to hear your alternative school experience, and I think it's actually very useful and very apt in the world that we live in now. So we're nearing the end of the interview, so I'm wondering, do we have any final questions from the attendees?
Yeah, I think we have 2 perfect questions for ending the interview from Lucas and Nevena. So Lucas asks, how do you see the future of Bali? And Nevena asks, what are your next goals and plans in the near future? So I think you can answer them in one question, and yeah.
Okay, well, first of all, Lucas and Nevena, thank you so much for your questions. It really keeps the conversation alive. So first question, how is my vision for Bali in the future? You know, whenever we talk about future of Bali, sometimes I think it's interesting because what I often think about is really pulling up the traditional, like, traditional lifestyle. So what actually existed here on the island before, and bringing that back into everyday daily practices. And especially when it comes to plastic pollution and the future of Bali, I wish that we do not use single-use plastic wherever we can avoid it, and go back to more traditional packaging, such as, you know, banana leaves, woven baskets. That existed before, so why can it not exist back in the future, or in the future? So that's really how I see Bali moving forward, especially with the plastic issue. And then what the next question, the second question was?
Yeah, what are your next goals and plans for the near future? Or you have some kind of goals you have for near future, or is it?
Well, so yeah, a couple of goals that I have. One is I've always dreamed of filming a documentary, and that goal has actually been achieved, and it's coming out this year. It's called Bigger Than Us. So that's a huge goal of mine in the near future. Then something else that's on my bucket list is really to just watch Youthopia grow and help contribute to the building process of this. And that's where my next chapters of my life will be dedicated towards. That's the reason why I graduated a year early, so I could become a full-time change maker. And the rest is open, beautiful, blank pages left for my story to be written.
Wow, okay. That sounds like a plan, and I'm eager to see the documentary. So I will. When is it coming out? Like next year, or?
So we have applied to film festivals all around the world and are currently in conversations with Netflix and Disney Plus. So hopefully, fingers crossed, Bigger Than Us will be with you before the end of this year. I'm hoping more towards the early part of the second year, is the earlier part of the second part of the year. That makes sense.
That's amazing.
Amazing. Yeah, that you are an incredible young change maker, and you have inspired so many of us. Like, I can see someone in the chat wrote that you should write a book. Absolutely. Do you have any plans to write books, or is that a bit further in the future?
I mean, I would love to write a book. I just have to convince myself to set some time apart and actually write it. So I have a challenge there. If you know any experts in book writing, send them my way, please. But yeah, hopefully there are a couple of ideas that I have, but yeah, that's definitely on my bucket list.
That's incredible. Okay, since we have a little bit of extra time, I just had a burning question that I was thinking about the other day, and I want to pick your brain. Okay, so I was reading the other day that companies nowadays have more of an incentive to be a bit more green, but actually this is not necessarily always great for the environment. So for example, some phone companies have stopped selling their chargers in an effort to reduce packaging, but that actually increases the amount of packaging involved, and because people would obviously buy the chargers separately, and that would take a whole other Amazon package or other cardboard package, so it requires more packaging. So how do you think we could solve that new problem that's cropped up with people trying to cheat their way out of being green?
Right. But at the same time, that the fact that these companies are having these conversations means that their departments are on the right sort of path. Maybe not there yet, but their intention, their alignment is there. We wouldn't have found out about that issue if they wouldn't have made that change. Now it's all about helping them understand what the better direction is, and I think that that's where us as young change makers have a really big responsibility to hold these companies accountable, because it's not enough to make a big PR announcement that this is it, they're going to do it, but they don't do it, right? Or they do it, but we find out that there's a whole bunch of side effects. I think it's about making sure the communication is there, making sure the transparency is there, for everybody to be involved in all steps of this goal setting progress, and just making sure that we understand it's just the beginning of the journey. There's not going to be one solution that solves all of the issues, right? So that's where I think we have to be open in learning, and companies and corporates have to be open in learning and making sure that the solutions that we are trying to implement, no matter, it might be also because that's the knowledge that we had of what is good at the time. So we implement it and then we learn about all the side effects. And that means that we cannot just stay at that point, but we need to move to a different solution or challenge ourselves to think bigger and different. So I think I'm dragging on now because it's late, but yeah, there's a lot of work to do. And I think it shouldn't exclude those type of companies that want to work, towards making a difference. But we do need to make sure that what the solutions that they're introducing don't make a bigger problem for us.
Absolutely. And I think it's very reassuring that young change makers like you and all of us, the way that we can put pressure on all of these companies to be more conscious about the environment, about society as a whole. And it's really inspiring what you've done, completely banning single-use plastics, plastic bags and straws and styrofoam from Bali. Getting that legally changed is incredible. And I guess it's just a testament to the power of the people. So thank you very much for inspiring all of us. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, and thank you for your time. You've been an absolute amazing person to interview, and it's been lovely meeting you.
Well, thank you so much, Anna and Elias and Moonshot Pirates, all of you tuning in. It was a pleasure to be able to share a little bit about my story with you tonight.